Watch your step, human. Her voice was low and oddly resonant, floating through the corridor like charged static. I turned sharply at the sound, only to find a tall figure blocking the narrow passage. My chest hit some part of her, something soft but powerful enough that I stumbled backward. Lights flickered overhead, and I saw glimmering patterns ripple across her exposed arms, like fluid constellations on her skin. She hissed softly, an intake of breath that sparked a fresh wave of lights all along those glowing filaments, and suddenly I found my heart racing as though I'd stepped into a charged field. "You've activated something you shouldn't have," she said, voice still trembling with contained anger or alarm. "Do you realize what you've done?" She continued, crossing her arms over a chest that glistened with a faint amber hue. The corridor smelled of disinfectant and the stale metallic tang that accompanied every old starship I'd ever known. I swallowed hard, trying to collect myself, unsure why her presence felt so overwhelming. I'd bumped into plenty of people in these cramped stations before. None had ever emitted a glow so immediate and intense. "Look," I said, forcing calm. "It was just an accident. We can blame the station's faulty gravity or the fact that you came out of nowhere." She took a step closer, those lights rippling again with a deeper color. A pulse of heat wafted from her body, enough to make me take notice in an entirely different way. "An accident that sets me off on a path not easily undone," she replied. Her luminous gaze wandered across my face. She had pupils shaped almost like slits, but they shifted with changing patterns of color. "I can feel it. The contact has triggered the subland in my side. You might not know the significance, but it means your presence is going to linger within me." I blinked, utterly lost. "Pardon me? Don't pretend ignorance," she snapped. Her voice was like a subdued hiss, but layered with a smooth timbre. "Any child of your star lanes knows not to make direct friction with my kind. But fine, maybe you truly don't know." Her glare deepened. "I'm a Zyria, a Shilthari, and contact of that nature can prime a breeding gland. Next time you choose to get close, be prepared for the consequences." She turned with a sharp pivot, stirring the stale air. Without warning, a low, musical hum emanated from her throat, and her patterning changed once more, swirling with copper-colored energy. "You rub against me," she whispered, "and your body heat has awakened a response I can't suppress. I'm going to need your help with it, whether you like it or not." I found myself transfixed for a moment. I'd never heard of Shilthari, though I'd flown from system to system for years on my battered scout ship. I was just trying to pick up odd jobs in the fringe worlds, scavenging and trading cargo to keep myself afloat. But I'd never encountered someone like her, with glowing filaments that changed color at a whim and a strong, commanding presence that rattled my chest. "I'm not sure who taught you about humans, but you should know, we don't usually go around activating alien breeding glands by accident," I said as firmly as I could manage. My own breathing was fast. Adrenaline from that unexpected collision was still spiking through me. Her lips, dark and shaped with an entrancing curve, twitched into something that resembled a sardonic grin. "It doesn't matter what humans usually do. You did it. And now your scent, your heat, your entire presence has keyed my body into a cycle. If I walk away, it's going to get worse until I either find resolution, or find you again." She paused, her bright gaze flicking across my features. "But I have no intention of letting it go that far unchecked. Are you certain you want to deny me?" My breath caught. I'd done a lot of questionable things across the galaxies. I'd smuggled supplies, taken on mercenary gigs, and outrun slavers who tried to corner me in the outer orbits. I didn't frighten easily. But there was something in her tone that shot a different kind of fear, or was it excitement, straight to my core. "Look," I said, trying to gather some semblance of composure. "I just came here for a salvage job. I was told there's an old Draken freighter in Dock 11 that nobody's touched yet. I have no interest in messing with alien biology or stepping on local customs. If you want me gone, I can be gone." "Gone?" She snorted in a burst of derisive laughter. "Oh no, you misunderstand. I need you. Unless you wish to doom me to the brink of madness from an unfulfilled cycle. You don't strike me as cruel. She reached out a hand, and for the first time, I saw slender, faintly glowing lines that traced her fingers like living tattoos. One fingertip brushed my wrist, and a strong jolt coursed through me, a tingling wave that tightened my stomach and sent my mind spinning. This is what you've awakened, she murmured, meeting my eyes. I can feel your pulse hammering. Humans always act so tough, but you're sensitive to our frequencies. And what do you propose? I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Her lips parted in a slow, almost predatory smile. I propose we come to an arrangement. Come with me. We can talk, away from these flickering lights and prying eyes. I glanced around. The corridor was empty, yes, but station security cameras were always scanning. So many stations sold their surveillance feeds to the highest corporate bidder. And while I usually didn't mind the watchful eyes, something about this moment felt too private, too raw. All right, I said, forcing my tone to stay level. Lead the way. She turned, throwing a single look over her shoulder that forced the breath from my lungs in one swift punch. Her eyes flashed with swirling copper flecks. Her posture was regal, shoulders drawn back. She moved like she had absolute confidence in her body, despite her frustration. As I followed her, I realized I was stepping into something I didn't understand. That sensation of her skin's heat lingered on my wrist, like a brand I couldn't wipe away. She guided me past the corridor that led to the cargo lifts, then around a corner toward a series of old storage rooms. Most of them were sealed shut with rusting mechanical locks, but she paused at one and pressed her palm against a sensor panel. Her filaments lit up in a pattern that flickered across the door's readouts, and the lock disengaged with a muted click. Inside, the room was dimly lit by emergency luminescence strips on the ceiling, revealing scattered crates and half-dismantled pieces of machinery. I come here when I need quiet, she said softly, shutting the door behind us. The air was warmer, or perhaps I was just feeling her presence more acutely in the enclosed space. You're probably thinking I'm some feral creature, demanding your services. But it's not so simple. My people have a complex biological sequence for reproduction, and you triggered the initial stage. I really didn't mean to. My voice came out in a huskier tone than I intended. Obviously, she scoffed. I can sense your apprehension. But you must realize, it's not entirely unpleasant, is it? A wry half-smile tugged at my mouth. The rush of energy I felt at her touch was anything but unpleasant. It had been jarring, yes, but also oddly exhilarating, as though my entire body recognized some primal call I never knew existed. What do you want from me exactly? I asked, not sure if the answer would be as direct as I feared. I'm not looking to become some unwilling father of an alien brood. Relax, she said, stepping forward. Her gaze traveled across me in slow appraisal. My cycle takes time. It's not as if one brush of our skin would immediately produce offspring. It's more about a synergy of energies, the alignment of certain glands, the interplay of pheromones. Her voice dropped, the timbre deepening. It's complicated. And oh, how I loathe explaining it to an outsider. She ran her fingers along the side of her body, where a faint luminescence pulsed in a swirl, just below her rib cage. This is the subgland that you woke up. You can think of it as a reservoir of potential. It's not a simple on-off switch, it requires a cooperative partner. My body thinks you're that partner. So it's going to keep prompting me to draw closer to you, to deepen our bond, physically and otherwise. A thrill shivered down my spine at the word physically. Her tone held a note of something warmer than animosity now, as though she were fighting a curiosity of her own. I'm going to need a name, she said quietly. I can't keep calling you human. I'm Jalen, I replied. I'm a pilot, freelance, not affiliated with any corporation. Jalen, she repeated, tasting the syllables. I'm Aziria, as I mentioned. My clan was once revered, but... She paused, tension in her shoulders. That doesn't matter anymore. Her expression changed, something like regret crossing her features. Look, I'm not forcing you into anything. Despite how it may sound, you could leave right now. You'd have a head start. I'm sure I could find a way to deal with the consequences of an awakened cycle. The way she said it, half challenge, half plea, made my throat tighten. Maybe I could slip away, collect my salvage, and leave the station before she tracked me down. But guilt coiled in my gut. She'd made it sound dire. And I'd felt the visceral power of that contact. Some primal corner of my mind was whispering that I'd never quite experience anything like that again, at least not with a human partner. I don't run from responsibility, I said, albeit with a slight quaver in my voice. She turned her gaze to me, searching for something. Is that what you think this is? A mere responsibility? I'm not sure what to call it, I admitted, stepping closer. But if you claim you might spiral into madness if I walk away now, let's figure out what it means. A flicker of relief softened her features. I won't pretend it's easy. But if you stay, you and I will be bonded in a way you might not expect. Our bodies' chemistry will align. Emotions can become heightened. It can be dangerous if we're not careful. Why is it dangerous? Her lips curled into a half-smile. Because the Shothari bond is not a trivial attachment. If we fully proceed, your presence will resonate with my biology, and we'll be connected in ways that humans rarely understand. Are you prepared for that? I exhaled, trying to steady my thumping heart. I don't know if I'm prepared, but I'm curious. Another wave of luminescence rippled across her filaments. She bit her lower lip, blinking slowly. The first surge is strongest. It can overwhelm reason, flood us both with desire beyond rational control. My people usually have rituals for this, preparations, a ceremonial approach to harness the cycle. But here we are, in some dingy storage room, with no elders to guide us. She let out a soft, bitter laugh. I can't say it's how I imagined it. My mind spun. I'd come to this station to scavenge a derelict freighter. Now I stood on the cusp of an impossible connection with an alien whose biology apparently demanded I help her into some form of bonded cycle. Maybe we can find a middle ground, I said, hesitating as I took another step closer. My pulse hammered at the nearness of her, at the subtle glow radiating warmth along her side. We don't have to rush anything. We can see how to manage this condition. She nodded slowly, though her breath was heavier. I could see a faint sheen on her collarbones, the result of a building internal heat. All right. Then we need to get off this station. Too many eyes, too many potential threats. I have a ship. It's small, built for speed. I have a ship too, I offered. But let's decide whose vessel is better prepared for a quick exit. Her brow creased. You're trusting me to just come along with you. I figure we're already past the point of normal caution. I tried for a half grin, not entirely sure why I was flirting. Something about her drew the words out, as though the tension in the air demanded a release. She studied me for a moment, eyes narrowed. Then she raised her chin. I have cargo to move. My personal items, plus something I can't leave behind. Let's check your ship first. If it's big enough, we'll use it. If not, we use mine. Fair, I replied. But we should be quick. The station has a high turnover, and I don't want corporate scouts seeing me here. They'll try to corner me into contracts I don't want. Of course, she said, turning briskly to the door. She paused, looking back at me with a sly glint in her eyes. But first, I need you to steady my next surge. My body is going to keep wanting you to fulfill certain urges. Physical contact helps manage the waves of heat. I swallowed, half lost in those shimmering patterns that laced her arms. All right, I said. She came closer again, pressing a palm to my chest. I felt the power of her species thrumming through that single point of contact, a deep hum that resonated like a distant star's pulse. My breath caught, and for a moment, I was seized by a dizzying sensation of swirling warmth that coiled through every muscle. A strange thought struck me. It felt like an invitation. Like her body was opening a door, waiting for me to step through if I dared. It took a moment for me to clear my head. She parted from me, those glowing lines on her skin receding to a calmer hue. That will keep the surge at bay for a short while, she murmured. But not forever. Something in her voice was equal parts frustration and relief, as if she hated depending on me yet couldn't deny the need. "Let's go," I said, guiding her out of the storage room. We navigated the corridors in tense silence. Occasionally, I'd look over to see her scanning the surroundings, likely searching for potential threats or gawkers. The station was a labyrinth of rusted metal and flickering lights, a place where mercenaries and merchants rubbed shoulders without question. It was easy to lose yourself in the crowd. Reaching the docking bay, I led her to my ship, a battered vessel named the Sparrow's Echo. Sure, the name was corny, but it had saved my hide more times than I could count. She studied its lines with a critical eye. "You maintain it decently," she said, though her tone indicated she was still unimpressed. "I try. It's not the fastest in the quadrant, but it has hidden compartments, enough for personal cargo." She walked up the short ramp, her filaments casting an eerie glow on the dusty interior. "This might do, but I have cargo, as I said." I closed the hatch behind us, and the door sealed with a hiss. "What kind of cargo?" "Salvage," she said, tapping on a small device attached to her belt. "And an artifact from my people. I can't leave it behind, as it's all I have left of my clan's heritage." "I'll help you load it," I offered. "But we need to hurry." She nodded, turning to face me in the dim overhead lighting. I could see each line of her glowing patterns flicker faintly, responding to our proximity. Her gaze lingered on my face. "Thank you, Jalen. I'm not sure you realize what you're getting into." A wry smile pulled at my lips. "I barely have a clue, to be honest. But I'll figure it out." She gave a short, tense laugh. "We should get the cargo quickly. Another wave is already building, and I'd rather not cause a spectacle by trembling in the corridor." Without further discussion, we exited the ship and headed down to a lower dock. I watched as Azaria accessed an old cargo hold. Inside were 3 sealed crates and a cylindrical container about as tall as my waist. She touched it gently. "This is the artifact," she said quietly. "It resonates with the patterns of my people. It's said to hold the echoes of our ancestors." I lifted an eyebrow. "Sounds valuable." "It is. And highly sought after by those who would twist its power." Her lips pressed into a tight line. "The Shothari have lost so much. I won't let them lose this, too." Carefully, we stacked the crates on a small hover dolly. Azaria guided the cylindrical container with both hands, her filaments pulsing as if reacting to the artifact itself. I caught a glimpse of swirling etchings on the surface, reminiscent of the patterns on her skin. It gave off a faint hum, almost beyond hearing. A suspicious tingle zipped along my arms, raising the hair on the back of my neck. We made our way back to my ship. The entire time, I was hyper-aware of her presence behind me, that heated aura that seemed to brush my senses like a whisper, drawing me in. She was silent, but I could feel her tension. Once the cargo was secured aboard the Sparrow's Echo, she exhaled shakily. "Thank you," she said at last. "Now we can leave. Unless you have more business here?" "No," I said firmly, thinking of the Draken freighter I was supposed to salvage. But something about Azaria's predicament overshadowed my usual hustles. "I'll help you get where you need to go, so you can handle your condition." She looked at me with cautious appreciation. "I know a planet on the outskirts of the Jarrus system. My people once made pilgrimages there. There are caves imbued with certain resonant crystals that might help stabilize my body's cycles." She hesitated, crossing her arms, the glow intensifying. "It's also a place I've been avoiding for years. But maybe now, there's no choice. We'll head there," I promised. She nodded, stepping back to let me access the cockpit. I settled into the pilot's seat, flicking switches and initiating the pre-launch sequence. She hovered behind me, the subtle crackle of her presence making the nape of my neck tingle. When the engines powered up, a dull roar vibrated the interior. "Strap in," I called over my shoulder. "It's not the smoothest departure." She slipped into the co-pilot's seat gracefully, adjusting the harness to accommodate her slender build. I caught her glancing my way, eyes full of unspoken tension. The docking clamps released, and we lurched out into open space, leaving the station's grime and flickering lights behind. As the thrusters engaged, I watched her close her eyes, letting out a slow breath. Golden lines shimmered along her arms in gentle pulses. The effect was mesmerizing. Once we cleared the station's perimeter, I punched in a course for the Jarrus system. "It'll take a few jumps," I said, scanning the NAV data. "We'll have to refuel or at least slipstream somewhere along the route." "I understand," she replied. "Just get us there before the cycle overwhelms me completely." Her tone was clipped, but behind it, I sensed a tremor of need or fear. I reached out, impulsively brushing my fingertips over her wrist. She stiffened, then let out a soft, shaky exhale as the glow along her forearm flared for a moment. "Thank you," she managed, turning her gaze away as though embarrassed by her own vulnerability. I withdrew my hand gently. There was something profoundly intimate in that simple touch, as if we were treading on sacred ground. "You're not alone in this," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure what I meant. She said nothing, but the lines of her body relaxed slightly, a quiet acceptance of the moment. We soared through the black expanse, stars streaking as we prepared for our first jump. My mind churned with questions, curiosity, and a hint of apprehension for what lay ahead. She closed her eyes, leaning back in the seat, the glow of her filaments dimming to a faint, steady rhythm that matched the subtle hum of the ship's engines. In that silence, I realized how drastically my life had changed in the span of a single hour. I'd collided with a mysterious alien woman who claimed I'd ignited some breeding gland that might drive her into madness or force us into an intimate bond. And part of me, maybe the reckless, restless part, was strangely enthralled. I'd been drifting through the galaxy for years, looking for something. Maybe this was it. Or maybe I was in over my head. Either way, there was no turning back now. We completed our first jump a few hours later, dropping back into normal space in a remote sector. The swirling blue shift of the slipstream faded, revealing a vista of stars and the faint silhouette of a swirling nebula. Aziria stirred in her seat, the glow on her skin intensifying slightly. The surge was coming back. "We can stop for a moment," I offered, my voice soft. "If you need to steady yourself." She nodded, unbuckling her harness. Her eyes found mine, and there was no banter, no sarcasm in her expression, just a raw vulnerability. I guided her out of the cockpit and into the small cabin. The ship's interior was cramped, with a narrow corridor leading to a bunk area and a makeshift lounge. Once inside, she leaned against the bulkhead, pressing a hand to her side where the gland must be. "It's rising again," she murmured, her voice unsteady. "I can handle it for a while, but touch makes it easier." The way she phrased it sent a tremor through me. My throat felt dry. I'm not sure what to do." She gave a soft laugh, tinged with self-consciousness. "Just be near me. Your warmth soothes the cycle. Though it may lead to tension. I won't lie about that." I hesitated, but the care in her eyes, the slight tremble in her posture, pushed me forward. I stood closer, letting her slip her arms around my waist. Her body was warm, almost feverish. My pulse thundered. I raised a tentative hand, resting it on her back. The glowing filaments lit up under my touch, swirling in mesmerizing shapes that rippled outward. It was unbelievably intimate, but there was a tenderness there, too, as if the swirl of our energies was forging some new language between us. Her breath caught, and she nestled her cheek against my chest. "This is awkward for me," she whispered, "depending on a stranger. But I can't help what's happening inside me." "I get it," I said, my voice quieter than usual. "Trust me, this is a first for me, too. It won't always be this raw," she continued, swallowing. "We Shothari have ways of channeling the breeding heat. If we were among my clan, I would have had guidance. But out here, everything's uncertain." I ran my hand in slow, cautious circles along her back. The motion seemed to calm her, and I sensed her breathing gradually steady. "Tell me about your clan," I found myself asking, partly to distract from the heady sensation of our bodies touching like this. She hesitated, then sighed, pulling away just enough to look into my eyes. We lived on a planet called Saratha. It was lush and brimming with crystalline grottos. Our kind formed communal bonds, and when a breeding cycle was triggered, it was often a celebration. But that was before slavers and corporations set their eyes on our territory. We were driven away, scattered. I ended up here, drifting. Her expression hardened. I lost everyone I cared about. My clan was decimated. The ones who survived are scattered across systems, in hiding or enslaved. A pang of sympathy coursed through me, overshadowing my own discomfort. I'm sorry, I said softly. I've seen what these corporations can do. They devour worlds for profit, leaving only husks behind. She nodded. That's why I must keep that artifact safe. It's a piece of our heritage. If it falls into their hands, they'll exploit it, maybe twist it into a weapon. Or they'll try to harness our cycles for their own twisted breeding programs. I can't let that happen. I tightened my arms around her in a supportive embrace. She let her head rest against my shoulder. I won't let it happen either, I promised, surprising myself. Her gaze flicked up, and I saw something like gratitude glint there. You barely know me, she whispered. Why do you care? I shrugged, feeling a complex swirl of emotions. Maybe I'm tired of being a bystander. Maybe I'm just enthralled by your glow. I don't know. But I'm here, and I want to help. She exhaled, a tremble escaping her lips. Slowly, her glowing patterns calmed, returning to a gentle pulse that matched the rise and fall of her breath. The surge is easing. Thank you? I nodded, stepping back. My skin prickled in the aftermath of that contact, a lingering heat. We can't stay here too long, I said, moving to the cockpit entrance. We should jump again soon. The faster we reach those caves you mentioned, the better. Yes, she agreed. You're right. She followed me back to the controls, settling into the co-pilot seat. As we prepared for the next jump, I sensed a new connection between us, an unspoken understanding forged by necessity and empathy. We were still strangers in many ways, but fate, or biology, had thrown us together. It felt as though the universe was weaving a peculiar tapestry around us. The second jump was longer, the engines whining in protest. On the other side, we emerged near a swirling red dwarf star, an eerie glow bathing the cockpit. Iziria tensed, glancing at the star's radiance with faint disapproval. This region is known for pirate activity, she muttered. We should keep our guard up. I nodded. Sure enough, I caught glimpses on the scanner of lurking vessels that didn't broadcast any official registry. My fingers tapped the console, adjusting our heading to avoid them. Yet one blip altered its course, moving toward us. We might have company, I said, tension creeping into my voice. Let's hope they think we're not worth the trouble, she murmured. Though if they catch wind of what's in our hold, they might decide otherwise. I'll try to slip around them. I initiated a maneuver, angling the Sparrow's echo into a shadowed region behind a small cluster of asteroid fragments. For a moment, the other vessel hovered in space, scanning, uncertain. Then it turned away, seemingly uninterested. Relief flooded me. Iziria let out a breath. That was close. We'll jump again, I said. Better not linger. And so we did, crossing more of the star lanes. Between jumps, she'd sometimes lean closer, letting me place a hand on her back or side to stave off another wave. Each time, I felt that same electric hum, that same sense that we were stepping deeper into uncharted territory. With each surge, I glimpsed more of her vulnerability, and with each comforting touch, I sensed her trust in me growing, albeit cautiously. Eventually, we emerged near the Jarrah system, a swath of swirling stardust and rocky planets. Which one? I asked, scanning the readouts. She directed me to a small, largely uncharted planet near the system's periphery. It's called Henri, she said. A place my ancestors frequented for its resonance crystals. The caves are believed to be a sacred site. The planet was a mottled expanse of teal and ochre from orbit, with swirling clouds that formed strange patterns in the upper atmosphere. I guided the ship onto a stable vector and prepared to descend. As we approached, turbulence jolted us. Storm clouds roiled below, and the sensors flickered with readings of static discharge. "We'll have to land carefully," I muttered, wrangling the controls. "The atmosphere is thick with ionization." "Do what you must," Iziria said, bracing herself. Lightning arced outside the viewports, painting the interior with ghostly flashes. My heart thumped, adrenaline surging. The sparrow's echo rattled under the barrage of high winds. With some skill and a lot of luck, we cleared the worst of the clouds, emerging over a landscape of jagged cliffs and canyons. The sun's light was weak, filtered through the swirling storm above. I spotted a plateau near a yawning cavern entrance, partially hidden by mist. "That must be it," she said softly, her filaments sparking with anticipation. I landed the ship with a heavy thunk, the landing gear complaining but holding. Outside, gale winds whipped across the plateau, scattering dust. Iziria and I exchanged glances. "Ready?" I asked. She gave a determined nod, though I could see tension etched in her features. "Let's find out if these caves can help me." We lowered the hatch and stepped into the swirling wind. She wore a cloak she'd found among the ship's spare gear, while I donned my usual jacket. Together, we pushed forward, the artifact container clutched in her arms. Sand bit at our faces. At the cave mouth, the wind died down, replaced by a silence broken only by distant dripping water. I flicked on a shoulder light, but Iziria held up a hand. "No need," she murmured, stepping deeper. Her filaments began to glow in the semi-darkness, casting a warm illumination around us. It revealed a vast tunnel sloping downward, its walls studded with small crystalline formations that caught her glow and echoed it back in shimmering reflections. "It's beautiful," I breathed, feeling an otherworldly sense of awe. She stepped carefully, reverently. "Yes. My ancestors believe the crystals here resonate with our own internal patterns, helping to balance the cycle. If this place still holds power, it should stabilize me." A short time later, we emerged into a cavern so large that our lights couldn't reveal the ceiling. Pillars of stone rose like ancient sentinels. Embedded in them were crystals of various sizes, some dull and fractured, others gleaming faintly. Iziria approached one column, pressing her palm to a large, amethyst-like crystal. Her filaments responded with a surge of color, and a low hum filled the air. She exhaled a trembling breath. "Yes, I can feel it. This will help." She set down the artifact container carefully, opening its lid. Inside was a spherical object with swirling lines reminiscent of her skin. She cradled it with reverence, then placed it on a smooth stone shelf that jutted from the cavern wall. "We'll let it attune to the crystals," she said. "Now, I must attune too." She looked at me, and her posture was tense. "The cycle is strong, but these crystals should dampen it. Still, I need your help to direct the energy." My pulse ticked faster. "What do you mean?" Her cheeks flushed with a dim glow. "Contact, closeness, maybe more. Don't worry, I won't force you if you're unwilling. But we've come this far. My body is primed. The crystals can only do so much. Without a partner to funnel the excess energy, I'll remain in flux." My heart pounded. Something about this place, this vast, echoing chamber, the ancient resonance thrumming in the walls, made the thought both terrifying and enthralling. I stepped closer, ignoring the swirl of conflicting emotions. "Show me what to do," she exhaled, relief mingling with a deep tension. "Just let me guide you. We'll see how our bodies respond. Shothari's cycles are intense, but with these crystals, we can temper the extremes." Carefully, she reached out and pulled me closer by the front of my jacket. The flickering lights of her filaments danced, reflecting off the crystal-laden walls. As her body pressed to mine, I felt that now familiar surge of warmth, a tingling that stole my breath. The air felt thick with potential. Her hand slipped behind my neck, drawing me into a closeness that made my blood sing. Our breathing echoed softly in the cavern. I had 1,000 questions, but none of them mattered in that moment. The sense of purpose, of inevitability, filled me as if the planet itself approved of our union. Heat flared along my torso where her body touched me, and I couldn't help a soft groan as the pulse of her cycle reached out for me, coaxing me deeper into the moment. Iziria let out a trembling sigh, pressing her forehead to mine. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "This is overwhelming, I know. I can handle it," I whispered back, even as my heart pounded wildly. She guided my hands to her waist. Beneath the cloak and layers of her garments, her skin radiated an exotic warmth. Sparks of bioluminescence danced under my palms. I let out a shaky breath, focusing on the gentle glow of the crystals around us. The pulsation in the walls seemed to synchronize with the pounding of my heart. Slowly, carefully, she tilted her chin, brushing her lips against mine. A current of energy crackled through that minimal contact, far more intense than any kiss I'd experienced. It wasn't just lips, it felt like our entire beings brushed together, exchanging luminous pulses that made my veins light up. I pulled her closer, drowning in the strange, enthralling sensation. She let out a quiet moan, her body trembling. Then she pulled away, just slightly, her eyes reflecting the shimmer of the crystals. "We need to align with the cave's resonance," she explained, voice husky. "Let the crystals absorb the excess." I swallowed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. "Just tell me how." She pressed her glowing palms flat against my chest, and I felt something shift, a subtle shift in the air, a vibration that threaded through me like an invisible cord. The crystals nearby glowed in response, their surfaces brightening as if feeding on our combined energies. I remembered her warning about how intense this bond could be, how it might affect my emotions. But at that moment, I couldn't find any fear left in me, only a fierce yearning to ease her burden, to connect. Our lips met again, and this time it was deeper, an unspoken conversation of heat and light. My hands ran along the lines of her hips, the sensations amplified by the crystal hum around us. She moaned softly, pressing closer. The air crackled, and my mind swirled with color and warmth. Somewhere in the background, I sensed the spherical artifact pulsing in tandem, as if the cave's ancient resonance was weaving our energies together. I felt Iziria trembling, her body shaking with the intensity of the cycle, but also with relief. As if each kiss, each brush of our skin, was siphoning away the ache that threatened to consume her. My own body lit up in response, as if an invisible bond was forging itself in the charged air. But beneath the raw need, there was also tenderness. I could sense her vulnerability, her loneliness, the weight of carrying her people's relic on her shoulders. And she, in turn, must have sensed my own ghosts, the emptiness I'd been drifting with for years, the longing for a purpose I could cling to. Gradually, we broke apart, gasping for breath. The crystal's glow began to subside, returning to a soft luminescence that left the cavern in a twilight glow. Iziria rested her forehead against my chest, breathing heavily. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice tight. "I can feel the cycle settling, not gone, but more under control." I wrapped my arms around her, my heart still pounding. "Is that all it takes?" I teased softly, though my own breath was ragged. Her laugh was a shaky exhalation. "Not entirely. The crystals help. You help. It will come in waves, but this place is sacred to my people for a reason." Her eyes slid shut. "I feel more stable already." We remained there, locked in each other's embrace, as the echoes of our energy rippled through the cavern. I couldn't recall feeling more alive or more uncertain. Because as powerful and mesmerizing as this was, I knew it was only the beginning. Outside, the storm winds howled, but in that moment, we were safe in a world of shimmering crystals and pulsing hearts. Iziria finally stepped back, letting out a long breath. "The cycle will keep surging periodically, but we have a stronger anchor here. We can stay until it's fully regulated, or until—" She hesitated, her cheeks flushed with faint color. "Or until we realize what exactly we want this bond to be." I smoothed a hand over her arm, feeling the slight tingle of her filaments. "Then we should stay and see it through." A shadow passed over her face. "We should, but we can't linger too long. If certain people track me here, they'll stop at nothing to claim the artifact. This place may be hidden, but the Jarrus system isn't entirely off the star charts." My jaw tightened. "Then we'll keep our guard up." She nodded, picking up the spherical relic gently and holding it close. For now, though, let's rest. The air here is rich in certain minerals. Breathing it in is part of the healing process. Come with me. She led me deeper into the caverns, where the glow of crystals provided a natural luminescence. I followed, the echoes of our near intimacy pounding in my veins. Each step revealed new wonders, stalagmites embedded with shimmering stones, glowing pools of mineral-rich water. The entire place felt ancient, alive. We found a small enclave sheltered by an overhang of rock. The floor was relatively smooth, blanketed by a moss-like growth that emitted a soft, pale light. Iziria knelt, setting the sphere down. "This is a good spot," she murmured. "We can rest here for a bit." She shrugged off her cloak and stretched, her filaments glowing with residual energy. I sank down beside her, feeling the subtle warmth emanating from the moss. "Never been in a place like this," I admitted, voice echoing. "It's like we stepped onto a different world entirely." "Yes," she said, her voice solemn. "My people once protected these caverns fiercely. They believed outsiders would desecrate them. Funny how I'm the one bringing an outsider here now." Her gaze met mine, uncertain yet determined. I trust you." Those words struck a chord in me. "I won't betray that trust," I said, laying a hand over hers. A quiet moment passed, the air thick with unspoken possibilities. Then, in the distance, a faint rumble reverberated through the stone. Iziria jerked upright, filaments flaring. "That's not thunder," she whispered. My gut twisted. "Ships?" She closed her eyes, focusing, and the crystals around us flickered in response to her tension. "Possibly. We should check." We scrambled to our feet, anxiety racing. So much for a peaceful respite. If someone was here, pirates, slavers, or corporate hunters, they'd sense the presence of a small craft. They might pick up on Iziria's unique biology. We hurried back toward the entrance, the storm winds howling louder, but it was a different sound that seized our attention, the distant roar of a thruster engine. My heart pounded. "Stay behind me," I told her, although realistically, I wasn't sure which of us had the advantage. Her species had hidden depths. But my protective instinct flared nonetheless. Stepping out onto the plateau, we found the sky churning with storm clouds. A single ship hovered in the air, lights piercing the gloom. A smaller craft was landing on a nearby ledge, kicking up dust and debris. Figures in armor hopped out, scanning the area with handheld devices. Iziria stiffened. "They're scanning for the artifact. I can feel it resonating. How the hell did they track us?" I hissed. "My guess is they caught my energy signature," she said in a tight voice. "I tried to be careful, but the cycle can register on certain scanners if you know what to look for." A knot of fear twisted in my gut. But beneath it was a steely resolve. I stepped forward, hand drifting to the small blaster holstered at my side. "If it's a fight they want, wait," she murmured, placing a hand on my forearm. "We might not have to fight if we can hide the artifact or mask its resonance in the deeper caverns. But if they come too close, we'll do what we must," I finished, swallowing hard. She nodded, her glow flickering with anxiety. Together, we retreated into the cave. The hum of the artifact was pulsing more strongly, as if reacting to the presence of these intruders. Iziria pressed her hand against it, willing it to quiet. "We need to go deeper," she whispered. "Where the crystals can mask its signal entirely. Lead the way." We slipped back into the labyrinth of tunnels, hearts hammering in unison. From behind, I heard voices echoing. My blood ran hot with the thought of them capturing Iziria, exploiting her or the relic for corporate gain. I couldn't let that happen. Not after everything we'd shared. Even if it was abrupt, it felt profoundly real. The deeper we descended, the more intense the crystal glow became. I felt the walls vibrating with energy, as though we were stepping into the heart of the planet. Iziria's breath quickened. I could sense the surge building in her again, but she gritted her teeth. "Not now," she muttered under her breath, sweat beading on her temples. "They're close," I said, hearing muffled shouts behind us. The intruders' voices bounced off the cavern walls in a chaotic echo, making it hard to tell exactly how near they were. We emerged into another vast chamber, this one with a central pool of luminescent water. Iziria rushed to the far end and placed the artifact on a carved dais. The crystals overhead shimmered in shifting patterns, reacting to the relic's presence. "This place is strong enough to shield it," she said, voice low. "But only if we can stabilize the resonance." She placed both palms on the artifact, filaments flaring. Her eyes squeezed shut, and the entire chamber seemed to pulse with a crescendo of energy. The crystal pillars glowed like a cosmic chorus, swirling with color. A rising hum filled my ears, disorienting but oddly beautiful. Then the footsteps of our pursuers grew louder, echoing through the entrance to this chamber. "We found them!" a voice shouted, ricocheting off the cavern walls. Iziria's eyes snapped open, and she turned to me, panic and determination warring in her gaze. "Stall them," she whispered fiercely. "I need a few moments to complete the resonance lock." My heart hammered. "Be careful." "Go," she urged, returning her focus to the artifact. Without hesitation, I sprinted toward the mouth of the chamber, blaster drawn. The intruders, 3 figures in dark armor, turned their helmeted faces toward me. One raised a rifle. "Stand down!" I barked, trying for intimidation, though they had me outgunned. "Or what?" the leading figure sneered. "We're here for the Shothari female, and whatever relic she's brought into this hole. She's under my protection," I growled, leveling my weapon. "You have no business here." The leader laughed, a hollow sound echoing through the helmet's modulator. "We have every business. The corporation placed a hefty bounty on her kind, especially ones carrying valuable artifacts." "Move aside, pilot." My teeth clenched. So it was corporate enforcers. The very scum I despised. "Over my dead body," I snapped. "That can be arranged." All 3 raised their weapons, and I ducked behind a crystal pillar as a volley of energy bolts ricocheted, sending shards of glowing crystal spraying through the air. Sparks flew, lighting the cavern in a strobe of violent flashes. Iziria remained behind me, focusing on the artifact, her body thrumming with luminous energy that poured into the dais. A swirling vortex of color swelled at the center of the relic, as if she were forging a protective barrier. Another barrage of shots came my way, and I returned fire, striking one intruder's shoulder. The armor fizzled, but the figure hissed in pain and dove for cover. Adrenaline coursed through me as I realized I had to buy Iziria enough time, no matter the cost. For a moment, I considered launching myself across the cavern in a wild attempt to tackle them or cause a distraction, but something else happened first. The ground trembled. The crystals on the ceiling flared with blinding light, and a shockwave rippled outward, slamming into everyone in the chamber. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing. The intruders were knocked back, too, crashing onto the stone floor. An ear-splitting hum vibrated in my teeth, forcing me to clamp my hands over my ears. Through the haze, I caught a glimpse of Iziria, arms raised, energy swirling around her in a kaleidoscope of color. Her eyes were wide, glowing with intense light. The relic hovered inches above the dais, humming in tune with the crystals overhead. "It's the resonance lock," Iziria shouted, her voice echoing. "I've tapped into the deeper power of this place. It will mask the artifact and protect it, but it can't hold forever." The intruders staggered to their feet, but the shimmering field between them and Iziria was impassable. They fired into it, bolts of energy dissipating in dazzling bursts. "Fall back!" the leader barked, retreating from the unstoppable vortex. I seized the opportunity, firing a few rounds at their legs. One bolt hit the rocky ground, sending up a cloud of dust. Another scorched a piece of armor, forcing them to scramble away. Their footsteps pounded back into the tunnel. My chest heaved with each breath, adrenaline roaring in my veins. For a moment, everything was a blur of chaos and bright shards of crystal light. Iziria was chanting something, a melodic, haunting sound that reverberated through the cavern. Her filaments pulsed in time with the relic, and the swirling energy began to subside. Gradually, the humming died away, leaving behind a deafening silence. My ears rang. The artifact lowered onto the dais, and Aziria swayed, exhausted. I rushed forward, catching her before she collapsed. "You did it," I whispered, supporting her weight. Her breathing was ragged, her eyes unfocused. "They'll regroup," she rasped, forcing herself to stand on shaky legs. "But the artifact is masked? I anchored it to this cavern's power. Even if they come back, they won't find it easily." Her eyelids fluttered closed for a moment. Then she opened them, gaze locking on mine. "We need to leave. We can't fight them all off if they bring reinforcements." I glanced at the artifact, nestled on the dais. "What about, it's safe here? The resonance is sealed. My people can find it again someday, when we're ready to return. For now, we must protect ourselves." The look on her face was pained, as though this decision to leave it behind cut deeply. But I understood the necessity. "All right," I said gently, tightening my hold on her waist. "Let's go back to the ship before they barricade us in." She nodded, leaning on me for support. Together, we hurried back through the tunnels. The crystals had returned to a subdued glow, their once fierce radiance spent. The cycle in Aziria's body also seemed dampened for the moment, perhaps by the power she'd unleashed. She walked with determined urgency despite her clear fatigue. When we reached the cave entrance, we peered out onto the plateau. The smaller craft was gone, but the storm's intensity had increased, whipping the air into a frenzy. "They might have left to regroup," I muttered, scanning the sky. "We need to move fast." We dashed across the plateau, battered by wind-driven sand. Reaching the Sparrow's Echo, we scrambled up the ramp and sealed the hatch. The engines groaned to life, and I guided us off the ground, buffeted by swirling gusts. My hands shook with the effort of controlling the thrusters, but I managed to punch us through the storm until we broke into calmer upper atmosphere. "Coordinates?" I asked Aziria, who slumped in the co-pilot's seat, still breathing heavily. "Anywhere but here for now," she whispered. "I need time to recover, and so do you." I nodded, setting a course for open space. As the ship climbed, I glanced her way, taking in her exhausted yet luminous form. The cycle had quieted, but the bond between us felt stronger than ever, forged by crisis and passion. I still didn't know what the future held for us, for this unexpected, overwhelming connection we shared. But in that moment, we were together, escaping the jaws of corporate hunters, hearts pounding in unison. As the Sparrow's Echo broke free of the planet's atmosphere, I felt a fierce sense of purpose fill me. We'd saved the artifact by anchoring it to that sacred cavern, and we'd saved ourselves, for now. My gaze lingered on Aziria, her eyes closing in weary relief. I wondered if she felt the same gravitational pull I did, drawing us closer despite every reason to remain guarded. Outside, the storm raged below, but we soared above it, free again among the stars. And in our wake, the crystals of Henri gleamed, cradling the Shilthari legacy in secret, awaiting the day it could rise anew. We jumped into slipstream once more, leaving Henri and its storms behind. Aziria remained slumped in her seat, her breathing growing steadier but still shallow. I locked in a random course to throw off any pursuers, guiding the ship into a region of space dotted with unremarkable asteroid fields and seldom-traveled routes. Once we stabilized, I powered down to minimal systems and let out a long exhale. The tension in my shoulders felt like iron rods. Aziria stirred. "Thank you," she whispered, turning her head to look at me. "I don't know if I'd have escaped without your help." "You would have found a way," I replied, attempting a small smile. "But I'm glad I was there." She shifted, wincing slightly. "The resonance took a lot out of me. The cycle is subdued, but it'll return once my energy recovers. Next time, it might be just as intense. Then we'll handle it," I said, trying to sound confident. The truth was, my mind still reeled from the visceral connection we'd shared in that cavern. Part of me craved it again, that potent surge of warmth and intimacy. Another part was apprehensive, uncertain what it all meant. Aziria gave me a long, searching look. Then she unbuckled the co-pilot's harness and rose shakily. "I need to rest," And I suspect you do too. I watched as she moved into the narrow corridor. Bunks are that way, I offered, pointing. She nodded in acknowledgement, her filaments dimming as she passed. I stared after her, heart caught in my throat. Her presence lingered even after she disappeared from view, an echo of soft luminescence. I leaned back in the pilot's chair, shutting my eyes. Sleep tugged at me, but my thoughts spiraled, memories of her trembling in my arms, the glow that danced under my touch, the overwhelming surge of desire that had threatened to swallow us both. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and I slid from the seat, stumbling to the bunk area. I found Aziria already curled on the lower bunk, her cloak draped over her. She looked almost peaceful, her breathing slow, filaments reduced to a faint shimmer along her arms. Quietly, I claimed the upper bunk, letting the hum of the ship lull me into a fitful doze. Strange dreams came, half filled with swirling lights and submerged in the haunting song of alien crystals. When I woke, the cabin lights were still dimmed. I glanced at the chronometer. Only a few hours had passed. Aziria was stirring below. I heard her breathing change, followed by a soft rustle of fabric as she rose. I slid off the bunk and found her standing in the narrow space, arms folded over her chest. She wore a pensive expression, and a subtle heat radiated from her. "Another wave?" I asked quietly, not wanting to startle her. She nodded, cheeks flushed. "It's not as strong as before, but it's there. The crystal resonance gave me some relief, but now that I'm away from it, my body is reasserting its demands." Her voice shook slightly, betraying the depth of her need. I approached, reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair, if it could be called hair, away from her face. It was soft, laced with faintly glowing strands that merged with her filaments. "Let's handle it together," I offered, my own heart stuttering. She released a shaky breath, leaning into my touch. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," I assured her, slipping an arm around her waist. Even through the layers of clothing, I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "We'll figure this out." She parted her lips as if to speak, but instead, she closed them, pressing closer. I could sense the wave in her, the rising tide of primal urgency. Her eyes fluttered shut, and her arms slipped around my neck. Gently, I guided her back against the bulkhead, trying to ignore the cramped surroundings. The hum of the ship seemed to grow quieter as I focused on her. Our lips met, soft at first, but quickly deepening as her cycle flared, intensifying the contact. A spark of that electric thrill shot through me, reminiscent of the cavern but also raw and immediate in this small space. She let out a soft moan, pulling me closer. I responded in kind, letting my hands find the curve of her hips, feeling her body respond with flickering glows that danced across her filaments. It was both exhilarating and vulnerable. This wasn't just lust, it was a necessity for her, and I felt honored to be the one she trusted. The tension between us built, each moment amplifying the throbbing heat. I kissed along her jaw, feeling her breath itch each time. She clung to me, her fingers threading through my hair, urging me to stay close. The cycle demanded closeness, intimacy, but there was also a tenderness there, a deepening bond. Before it could surge out of control, she pressed a hand to my chest, panting slightly. "Wait," she whispered. "We should be careful. Let it build slowly. If we rush, it might overwhelm us both." I nodded, reining in my own racing heart. I rested my forehead against hers, inhaling her scent, something like citrus and morning dew, layered with an exotic spice. "I'm with you," I murmured. She let out a shuddering breath. "Yes, you are." She kissed me again, more slowly this time, as if savoring the moment. Each brush of our lips sparked a wave of warmth that radiated down my spine. My hands slid up her arms, following the luminous patterns that flared at my touch. A quiet moan left her lips, and she pressed closer, seeking more contact. In that close darkness, I felt her body shift, her breath faltering as wave after wave of the cycle's heat coursed through her. Her nails bit gently into my shoulders, not in pain but in desperate need. I steadied her, supporting her weight. We moved in a slow rhythm, letting the tension build and recede, until finally, the cycle began to even out. Azuria's breathing steadied, and she slumped against me, exhausted but relieved. "Thank you," she murmured against my shoulder. "I can manage the rest on my own now." I tightened my hold. "You don't have to manage it alone." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "No, I don't. But I also don't want you to feel obligated. My kind can be overwhelming." I cupped her cheek, tilting her face up to mine. "Overwhelming, sure, but you're worth it." Her eyes shimmered with emotion. She opened her mouth to reply, but a sudden beep from the cockpit interrupted us. With a groan, I stepped away, my pulse still thrumming with the aftermath. "I should check that." She nodded, drawing in a slow breath. "Go." I hurried to the controls, scanning the readouts. A proximity alarm was triggered. Another ship. My stomach clenched. The sensors indicated a small vessel nearing our position. No ID codes. Likely trouble. "Azuria," I called, tension in my voice. She joined me, her posture snapping to alert. "Is it them?" I tapped the console. "Possibly. Hard to say, but it's unregistered. I can try to slip away, but they're already within scanning range." Her jaw tightened. "If they followed us, we can't let them lead others to the artifact's location." Agreed. I powered up the engines, ready to engage in evasive maneuvers. The unidentified ship accelerated, matching our heading. Then a hail crackled over comms. "Attention! Unidentified vessel. We wish to talk." Azuria shot me a look. "Ignore it." I hesitated, but something in the voice's tone gave me pause. It didn't sound like corporate enforcers. "Could be a trap," I said. "But maybe we should see what they want. They might not be after you." She nodded reluctantly. I opened the comm channel. "This is Jalen, pilot of the Sparrow's Echo. Who's calling?" A moment's silence, then a voice replied. "Call me Rulo. I'm a free trader in these parts. Saw you slip out of Jera's system in a hurry. Everything okay?" Azuria frowned. "That's suspicious," she whispered. "We had a run-in with corporate types," I said into the comm. "We're not looking to linger." "I see," Rulo replied. "I'm no friend of the corporations either. I'm just checking if you need assistance or looking to trade." I eyed Azuria. She shook her head. "We need to keep moving," she insisted. "No trades, no stops." Into the comm I replied. "We're fine. Thanks for your concern." "Fair enough," Rulo said. "Just know you're in a rough patch of space. If you need safe harbor, there's an outpost a few light hours from here. No corporate ties. Might be a good place to lie low." Azuria's expression wavered. "We do need time to stabilize and figure out our next move," she murmured. "A neutral outpost could be useful, as long as it's truly free of corporate influence." She tapped her foot, considering. "We can't run forever, and we need supplies." I nodded, returning to the comm. "Send coordinates." "Transmitting now," Rulo said. "You won't be bothered there if you keep your head down." After receiving the data, I cut the link and slumped in my seat, exchanging a glance with Azuria. "We risk exposure if we dock," she said. "But we risk exhaustion if we keep running." I gently took her hand, feeling the residual warmth of her cycle. "Let's see this outpost. If it truly is free from corporate control, we might find allies or at least a place to gather ourselves." She hesitated, then nodded. "We'll be cautious." Inputting the coordinates, I set a course toward the outpost. Rulo's vessel peeled away, heading on its own path, presumably satisfied with our decision. My thoughts churned. We'd lost the artifact to the depths of Henri's cavern, or rather, left it there for safekeeping. Azuria's cycle was manageable for now, but we were still fugitives, a pilot with questionable ties and a Shothari woman carrying a secret that corporations would kill for. Perhaps we'd find respite at this outpost, or perhaps it would only draw more trouble. Yet as my gaze lingered on Azuria's profile, the soft glow of her filaments pulsing in thoughtful patterns, I realized trouble or not, I couldn't turn away from her. We'd become entwined in a way that went deeper than mere coincidence. We navigated the emptiness of space, stars swirling by, and in that quiet, I reached for her hand again, feeling her gentle squeeze in return. No words were needed. Our hearts beat in unspoken solidarity, braced for whatever came next. We arrived at the outpost, a haphazard structure built onto the surface of a large asteroid. A cluster of docking bays jutted from the rocky exterior, surrounded by a flickering energy barrier that protected them from space debris. According to the scans, it was called Rasa's Drift, though I'd never heard of it. As we approached, Iziria checked her cloak and mask. She wanted to conceal her filaments in public, to avoid drawing attention. "You sure about this?" I asked, guiding the ship toward an open landing pad. "We could just refuel and leave." She pursed her lips. "I need more than fuel. I need certain herbs or compounds that can help regulate my cycle outside of the crystal environment. I used to have them, but I ran out after the last jump." "All right," I said. "We'll find what you need." I set the Sparrow's echo down with a careful maneuver. The deck hissed, decompressing. Lights flickered overhead. I powered down the engines, and we shared a tense look. "Stay close," I advised. "We don't know who to trust." She nodded. Once we exited the hatch, we found ourselves in a worn metal bay, walls scarred with scorch marks and graffiti. A flickering sign read Rasa's Drift in multiple languages, though some letters were missing. A board attendant waved us through, barely glancing at the docking fees. The corridor that led from the bay opened into a larger common area filled with stalls, crates, and a handful of tough-looking patrons. The smell of fried protein and stale alcohol hung in the air. This place reminded me of countless other fringe ports, a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and those who'd prefer to stay off corporate grids. Iziria clutched her cloak tighter, her face half hidden. "I can sense them," she whispered. "Humans, yes, but also other species. One or two might be empathic. We should avoid them if we can." I nodded. "We'll find the supplies and get out." We navigated the narrow walkways, passing stalls selling questionable wares, spare ship parts, black market cybernetics, exotic spices. Iziria paused at a small kiosk staffed by an elderly figure with leathery skin and wide eyes. Various jars and vials lined the shelves, some glowing faintly. "You got anything for Shothari cycles?" she asked in a low voice. The vendor squinted, then rummaged through a battered box. "Shothari, eh? Not too common around here. Might have something." Iziria's grip on my arm tightened. The vendor produced a small container of powder. "Crushed in at leaves. Usually used for fever, but I heard it can help with certain Shothari conditions." She studied it, sniffing the contents. "Yes, this might work." 50 credits, the vendor said. Iziria fished out a few credit chips. The vendor counted them, then passed the container her way. "Pleasure doing business. Try not to start any trouble," the vendor added, casting a suspicious glance at me. Iziria nodded, slipping the powder into a pouch beneath her cloak. We made our way back toward the docking area, but a ruckus broke out near one of the bars, a table crashing, angry shouts, someone brandishing a weapon. People scattered, and I tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. But it seemed like typical outpost chaos, a fight over cheating in some card game. Still, the disturbance drew eyes, and for a moment, the swirling crowd parted. That's when I spotted a figure near the corridor leading to the docks. My stomach dropped. It was one of the corporate enforcers from before, or at least wore the same style of segmented armor. The figure's helmet was off, revealing a scarred face. They scanned the area as if searching for someone. My pulse kicked into overdrive. I tugged Iziria to the side, ducking behind a stack of crates. "They're here," I whispered. "At least one of them." Her eyes widened with alarm, her filaments flickering beneath the cloak. "We have to get back to the ship. We'll have to slip past them," I said, scanning the corridor. Another pair of enforcers appeared, flanking the first. My mind whirled. We could try to blend in or find another route. Then an explosion of glass and shouting erupted from the bar again, and in the chaos, The enforcers turned to see what was happening. "No!" I hissed. We darted across the open space, weaving through the panicked crowd. Bodies jostled us, someone cursed as we elbowed past. My heart pounded as we reached the corridor. If we could get to the ship, we could launch before they realized. We slipped into the docking bay. A passing droid beeped in annoyance as we cut in front of it. I saw the Sparrow's echo. At the far end, battered but ready. Just a few more steps, then a voice shouted behind us. "Stop them!" My blood ran cold. Iziria stumbled, gripping my hand. We broke into a sprint. A warning shot crackled past, striking the metal floor and sending sparks flying. We reached the ship's hatch. I slapped the panel, and the ramp lowered with maddening slowness. Another blast whined overhead, scorching the hull. Iziria dove inside, and I followed, slamming my fist on the emergency close button. The ramp rose with a creak. "I'll hold them off," I shouted, drawing my blaster. Iziria rushed to the cockpit. I fired a few shots at the enforcers who'd already spilled into the bay, forcing them to take cover behind fuel barrels. "Just get us off the ground!" I yelled. She stabbed at the controls, powering up the engines. The ship rumbled, lights flickering to life. The docking clamps locked us in place, though. "Override the clamps!" I barked, sliding into the cockpit behind her. She cursed, tapping rapidly at the console. "They locked us in. Probably signaled the outpost systems." Another volley of shots rattled the hull. The enforcers advanced, guns blazing. I growled in frustration. "Then I guess we'll do this the hard way." Grabbing an emergency lever beneath the console, I forced the mechanical clamp override. The ship lurched violently, a screech of metal on metal. Then, with a jolt, the Sparrow's echo wrenched free of the docking clamps, scraping the platform. "Hold on!" Iziria cried. She throttled the engines, and the ship rocketed forward, smashing through the magnetic barrier that sealed the bay. Warning alarms blared. Outside, the star-flecked void beckoned. We soared out, buffeted by a sudden wave of inertia. The outpost receded behind us, the docking bay lights flashing. A hail came through the calm, no doubt from the outpost control, demanding we halt. We ignored it. "We're clear!" I exclaimed, adrenaline pumping so hard my chest ached. Iziria nodded, hands still gripping the controls. "They'll scramble pursuit craft if they have them. Then we jump. Pick a heading." She locked in coordinates, and I activated the slipstream drive. The stars elongated into streaks, and the outpost vanished behind us in a blur of light. Once the jump stabilized, I allowed myself to breathe. Iziria slumped in her seat, pushing back the hood of her cloak. Her filaments sparked erratically, a sign of her heightened stress. "Damn them," she whispered. "They must have guessed we'd try to find supplies." I rested a hand on her shoulder. "We'll stay ahead of them. They don't know about the artifact's location now. You sealed it in the cavern. They can search Henri all they want, but they won't find it." She nodded, wiping a trembling hand across her brow. "We'll have to be vigilant. Corporate enforcers will track me across the galaxy. But at least for now, they can't claim my people's relic." Silence settled over us, broken only by the steady hum of the engines. We were fugitives once again, with no safe harbor in sight. But this time, I wasn't alone in my wandering. And for the first time, that thought steadied me more than it frightened me. Glancing at Iziria, I saw the reflection of slipstream lights on her face, her luminous gaze turned forward, determined despite the fear that lingered. My heart clenched with a mixture of protectiveness and admiration. "Jalen," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "I never wanted to involve anyone else in this. You've become my partner in survival, and more." I swallowed, memories of our intimate moments flickering in my mind. "I'm not complaining." She managed a hint of a smile. "We can't keep running forever. Eventually, we'll need a plan, a real plan for the future, for the cycle, for the artifact's fate." I nodded, leaning back in the pilot's seat. The slipstream roared around us. "We'll figure it out, Iziria. Together." She closed her eyes, letting out a quiet sigh. Then she reached across the small gap between our seats, finding my hand in the dim glow of the cockpit. Our fingers intertwined. No more words were needed. With that single gesture, we bound ourselves to a shared destiny, forging a flicker of hope in a galaxy overshadowed by greed and corporate tyranny. For the first time in years, I felt something akin to purpose. And in her eyes, I thought I glimpsed the same spark. We had each other, if nothing else. And sometimes, that was enough to keep the stars shining just a bit brighter. Time blurred in the slipstream. We made multiple short jumps to confound any tracking algorithms the enforcers might use, never staying in real space long enough to leave a clear signature. Isiria's cycle waxed and waned, each surge requiring quiet moments of contact, of shared warmth. As the days passed, our bond deepened beyond just physical necessity. We found ourselves lingering in conversation, her telling me stories of Soratha's lost grottos, me recounting the scrappy adventures of my early scavenging runs. We laughed at the absurdities of life on the fringe. We comforted each other when nightmares of corporate raids or personal regrets surfaced. Gradually, I noticed something changing in Isiria. Her filaments, once quick to flare with anxiety or surging desire, grew more steady. The powder she'd acquired at Rass's Drift helped regulate her biology, though it wasn't as potent as the crystals of Henri. She seemed more at ease, more in control of the heat that pulsed through her veins. Still, the cycle simmered beneath the surface, and at times we'd find ourselves locked in a tender embrace, channeling that energy so it wouldn't tear her apart. Those moments blurred the line between necessity and genuine affection. Each time, we emerged from the haze closer, more attuned to each other. One quiet evening, while drifting in the emptiness of uncharted space, we shared a simple meal in the cramped galley. Rations mostly, rehydrated noodles and some preserved vegetables. She made a face at the taste, her filaments flickering with wry amusement. "How do humans endure such blandness?" she teased. "It's cheap and it keeps you alive," I replied. She rolled her eyes, though a small smile played on her lips. "I miss the food of my people. We used to cultivate aromatic sea plants with a sweet tang. The thought of them now makes my mouth water." I chuckled. "Maybe someday we can find a place that grows similar plants. The galaxy's vast." Her expression grew wistful. "If my people were still united, we'd have enclaves across multiple systems, trading goods and culture. Now we're just scattered fugitives." My heart clenched at the sadness in her voice. I reached across the small table, taking her hand. "We'll do whatever it takes to help your people rebuild one day." She stared at me, eyes glistening. "You sound so sure." "I am," I said, realizing I meant it. She squeezed my hand, and a gentle glow passed along her filaments, a quiet sign of gratitude. Later that night, as I adjusted the slipstream course, Isiria approached with a thoughtful expression. "There's something we could try," she said softly. "A place we might find allies." My brow furrowed. "Allies? Like who?" "There's a rumor of a hidden sanctuary for refugees, an entire station that drifts in the uncharted zones, giving shelter to those fleeing corporate oppression. I've heard whispers. Maybe some of my people have found their way there." I arched an eyebrow. "A drifting station that welcomes outcasts? Sounds like a legend." She shrugged. "Perhaps. But if we can find it, they might offer protection, or at least a safe haven. We can gather resources, plan our next move. And maybe I can learn if any other Shothari survived the diaspora." My heart softened. "It's worth a shot. How do we find it?" She bit her lip. "I only know fragments of rumored coordinates. We'll have to piece them together, maybe ask around discreetly." "It won't be easy." I smirked. "I like a challenge. Let's do it." She smiled back, a flicker of relief in her eyes. Over the next few days, we pinged old contacts of mine, calling in favors or bribing them for half-forgotten scraps of star maps. We found mentions of a station called Dawn's Refuge, rumored to drift near the edges of the Vel Nebula. Another contact said it was near the Takir Rift. The coordinates didn't line up, leaving us with confusion. But we kept digging, analyzing flight logs, half-coded transmissions. Eventually, a pattern emerged, pointing us toward a region overshadowed by massive gas giants and swirling cosmic dust. "This must be it," Iziria muttered, her breath catching with excitement. I plotted the course, and we ventured into that hazy region of space. The star density was low, darkness pressing in. Our sensors flickered with ghost readings, as if the environment itself tried to hide secrets. But after hours of searching, we caught a faint signal, a rhythmic pulse that could be a beacon. Following it, we emerged into a clearing in the dust clouds, where a colossal structure loomed. It was indeed a station, though it looked cobbled together from multiple ships and stations, welded into a massive, sprawling hulk. Lights dotted its exterior, flickering like distant fireflies in the void. A battered sign read Dawn's Refuge, drifting on a half-broken ring. My heart pounded. Iziria's filaments glowed with anticipation. "We found it," she whispered. Carefully, we approached the docking bay, transmitting a hail. Static answered at first, then a crackled voice said, "Identify yourselves." "We're travelers seeking asylum," I replied carefully. "We've heard this is a safe haven." A pause, then, "Dock at Bay 7. No weapons drawn." The communication cut off. Iziria and I exchanged glances, hearts hammering. "Here we go," I said, guiding the Sparrow's Echo into the indicated berth. Once docked, we powered down. Through the viewport, I saw a handful of figures waiting, armed but not in corporate armor. They wore a mishmash of styles. I swallowed, checking with Iziria. She nodded. "We'll be all right." We descended the ramp, hands raised in a gesture of peace. One of the figures stepped forward, a tall woman with braided hair, wearing a patched flight suit. "Name's Ryan, I help run security here." "State your business." Iziria glanced at me, then back at Ryan. "We need a place to hide, and possibly find others of my people. We can trade or work in return for sanctuary." Ryan studied us, gaze sharp. Her attention flicked over Iziria's cloak, no doubt curious about what she hid. "You part of the Shotheri?" Iziria nodded slowly, pulling back her hood enough to reveal the faint glow of her filaments. Ryan's expression softened. "We've had a few Shothari come through, though not many. If you're on the run from Core, you'll fit right in. But we don't tolerate trouble here." I lowered my hands, relief washing over me. "We understand. We just need a chance to catch our breath." Ryan nodded. "All right. We have communal quarters you can rent. Supplies are scarce, so you'll have to barter or trade. But you're welcome to stay as long as you keep the peace. We've got folks from dozens of species here, all with their own stories of corporate exploitation." She eyed Iziria with sympathy. "You'll find some solidarity." Iziria bowed her head gratefully. "Thank you." As we followed Ryan into the labyrinthine station, I marveled at the patchwork corridors. Some sections were old cargo containers turned into living areas. Others were sleek hallways from a once luxurious liner. The lighting was sporadic, but there was a hum of community, a sense that everyone here had escaped something. Eventually, we reached a cluster of small rooms, each sealed with a simple lock. Ryan handed us a code card. "This one's yours for now. If you need medical attention, we have a clinic. If you cause trouble, we'll throw you out an airlock." She said it without malice, just a frank statement. We nodded our understanding. Once inside the cramped quarters, Iziria let out a shaky sigh. She lowered her hood fully, letting her filaments flare. The tension in her shoulders seemed to ease. "We did it," she murmured. "A place of temporary peace." I set down my bag, scanning the room, a metal bunk, a small storage locker, a flickering overhead light. Not luxurious, but a far cry from running in fear. "We'll see how long it lasts." Iziria nodded, turning to me. "I want to search for any other Shotheri who might be here. Maybe they have news of our scattered survivors." My chest clenched at the hope in her voice. "I'll help you," I said gently. "And in the meantime, we can gather resources, see if they have anything to further regulate your cycle." A subtle blush tinged her cheeks. Yes, that would be wise. Even though it's calmer, it's still there. Something in her tone made my stomach flutter. We had grown used to channeling her surges together, but that didn't erase the potent intimacy of it. If anything, it only deepened the bond. We should rest, I suggested. Then we can explore. She agreed, settling onto the bunk. I joined her, the cramped space forcing us to lie close. Neither of us minded. In the dim light, I brushed a stray filament from her face, and she caught my hand, pressing it to her cheek. Thank you, Jalen, she whispered, voice thick with emotion. For not running, for standing by me. My throat felt tight. I couldn't leave you to face this alone. She leaned in, our lips meeting in a tender kiss that spoke of relief, gratitude, and the spark of something deeper. In that moment, I realized how much she meant to me, an alien woman with glowing filaments and a hidden heartbreak, yet somehow the one who made me feel alive again. Our arms encircled each other, and we rested, hearts beating in a shared rhythm that lulled us into a peaceful sleep for the first time in ages. When we woke, the station's lighting cycle indicated it was morning, though in reality, we drifted in star-flecked darkness. Iziria yawned, filaments flickering softly, then she pulled on her cloak hood partway, wanting some anonymity in the corridors. We stepped out of our cramped room and into a bustling hallway. People of various species milled about, tall reptilian beings chatting with cyborg humans, a group of insecti travelers sipping from nutrient tubes, a pair of feline-faced aliens hawking trinkets from a portable kiosk. Iziria clutched my arm, her posture tense yet hopeful. We asked around discreetly for any Shothari presence, eventually directed to a portion of the station called the Grotto, an area where environmental controls favored species who needed higher humidity or unique atmospheres. Upon entering, we heard faint trickling water, and the air was thick with damp heat. Lights glowed behind water-filled tubes that snaked along the walls, reminiscent of an underwater labyrinth. Iziria's filaments brightened in response. Then, from a dim corner, a soft voice spoke in a language I didn't recognize, soft, melodic. Iziria stiffened, turning slowly. There stood another Shothari, a female with slightly different patterns of glow, leaning on a cane. She wore tattered garments, and her eyes lit up with surprise. You! The stranger whispered in a heavily accented standard. Iziria approached, tears glistening in her eyes. I stood aside, sensing this was a moment beyond me. The two Shothari clasped hands, filaments exchanging pulses of light. They conversed in hurried Shothari, voices trembling. Though I couldn't understand, I recognized the emotional weight, saw the tears that slid down the stranger's cheeks, mirrored by Iziria's choked sob. My own heart clenched. I looked away, giving them privacy in their reunion. Eventually, they switched to standard, perhaps for my benefit. I am Savi, the stranger said. I thought I was alone here, the last Shothari in Dawn's Refuge. It's been so long since I've seen another of my kind. Iziria gripped Savi's hands tightly. I had no idea. I searched for months in different systems, found nothing but rumors. How did you escape? Savi's gaze flickered with pain. Barely. A corporate raid destroyed my clan's settlement. I fled with a few others, but we got separated. I ended up here, and I've been in hiding ever since. I left the artifact on Henri, Iziria explained softly. It's safe there, sealed in the crystal caverns. I want to find a way for our people to regain what we've lost. Savi sighed. It's a noble dream, but we are scattered. The corporations are relentless in hunting us, wanting to exploit our breeding cycles for profit. If you found a safe place for the artifact, perhaps that's all we can do, keep our heritage alive until the day we can reclaim it. Iziria's shoulders slumped. That's part of why I'm here. I need refuge, and help controlling the cycle without the crystals. My friend Jalen has been assisting me, but we're always on the run. Savi looked at me with cautious gratitude. Thank you, human, for protecting her. We've seen few allies in these times. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Iziria's lip quivered with emotion, and she asked Savi about other survivors. Savi shook her head, explaining she'd heard rumors of pockets on distant worlds, but no confirmed safe haven beyond Dawn's Refuge. The conversation carried on, heartbreak lacing each exchange. My chest felt tight with sympathy. At length, Savi offered Aziria a small pouch. "Here," she said gently. "These are Shothari herbs grown in the grotto's microclimate. It can help stabilize your cycle better than the makeshift powders you've been using." Aziria's eyes brimmed with tears as she accepted the gift. I don't know how to thank you." Savi squeezed her hand. "Just survive, sister. That's thanks enough." They embraced, filaments pulsing in a silent dance of solidarity. I blinked away my own surge of emotion, stepping forward to lay a hand on Aziria's shoulder. Savi nodded at me. "Protect her well, human. She carries not just her own future, but the hope of our people." I bowed my head. "I promise." We left Savi with the understanding that we could return any time, forging a bond that bridged heartbreak and determination. Aziria seemed both relieved and burdened by the encounter. "It hurts," she whispered, as we made our way back to our quarters. "Knowing my people are so few, so scattered. But it feels good to see one of them again." I squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore, not completely." She nodded, blinking tears. "But what do we do now? Live here in Dawn's Refuge indefinitely? The corporations might eventually discover it. And we can't hide forever, can we?" My heart sank. She was right. We could try to build a life here for a while, gather resources, see if there's a way to help unify your people. She laughed hollowly. "Unify the Shothari? That would take a miracle. We have no leaders left, no homeland. Maybe you can lead them," I found myself saying, surprising even me. She stared at me, filaments flickering in shock. "I'm no leader, Jalen. I'm just a survivor. An exile. So was everyone before they became a leader." I shrugged. "You have the knowledge of the artifact, the breeding cycles, your clan's traditions. Others might look to you, especially if Savi's right and your kind is scattered." Aziria folded her arms, turning away. "I can't even manage my own cycle without help. How could I lead anyone?" My heart ached at her self-doubt. I moved closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I believe in you. And you're not alone, remember?" She swallowed hard, turning to meet my gaze. "You're too kind, Jalen. I don't deserve it." "You do," I murmured. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to mine in a familiar gesture of closeness. We stood like that, letting the station's distant hum fill the silence. Eventually, we headed back to our small room, weighed down by heavy thoughts of the future, yet buoyed by the quiet comfort of each other's presence. Over the following weeks, we settled into a cautious routine in Dawn's Refuge. Aziria used the herbs Savi provided, mixing them with the powder in a small portable device that released the vapor. Breathing it in daily helped stabilize her cycle, reducing the frequency of intense surges. We took small jobs, repair work, cargo organization, in exchange for station credits to buy food and maintain the Sparrow's echo. We dined in communal areas, shared drinks with other refugees, heard harrowing tales of corporate oppression. I could see Aziria listening carefully, sometimes stepping in to share her own story. People gravitated to her quiet resolve. A handful of Shothari survivors visited from time to time, drawn by the rumor of another clanmate here. Aziria spoke to them, offered them comfort, even gave them small pouches of the herb mixture once she learned how to cultivate it in the grotto's environment. Word spread that Aziria was a healing presence for her people, that she understood the cycles and had a nurturing spirit. It wasn't leadership in a formal sense, but she was becoming a focal point for the scattered Shothari in the station. I watched with pride as she slowly emerged from the protective shell she'd built around her pain. Yet I also saw the toll it took on her. Each story of loss, each recollection of destroyed clan homes, reopened her own wounds. At night, in the small privacy of our quarters, I held her as she wept, her filaments glowing with sorrow. The intangible bond between us grew stronger. Our nights, once driven by necessity to quell her cycle, now mingled with genuine love, physical, emotional, a melding of two lost souls. Sometimes the surges still rose, especially when she was overwhelmed by the burdens of her people's stories. I'd feel her trembling at night, and we'd share slow, tender intimacy, letting the glow of her filaments guide us into a realm where we momentarily forgot the galaxy's cruelties. During one of those quiet evenings, after we'd stilled the wave of her cycle, she rested her head on my chest. Our breathing was labored, skins slick with sweat. A gentle glow still shone in her filaments. "Jalen," she murmured, voice soft with lingering passion. "I think I love you." My heart flipped. I brushed a kiss against her brow. "I think I love you too," I whispered, surprised at how easily the words came, how true they felt. She inhaled a shaky breath. "I never expected this, finding love in the midst of running, in the arms of a human I barely knew." A tender ache filled my chest. "Neither did I admitted. "But here we are." She smiled, blinking away tears. "I'm glad." We drifted to sleep in each other's arms, hearts lighter than they'd been in a long while. In the days that followed, Izuria discovered a renewed determination. With the herb mixture working effectively, she proposed teaching other Shothari in the station how to cultivate it themselves. A small greenhouse was established in the grotto. The local refugees pitched in, welding old lamp fixtures and rigging up irrigation. Seeds from the station's hydroponics were crossbred with the Shothari herb to produce a hardier strain. It was a small victory, but a significant one, evidence that the Shothari could still grow, adapt, even rebuild in some form. The greenhouse became a haven for Shothari in the Refuge, and for curious others as well. Izuria guided them, showing how to channel their natural luminescence to encourage growth. She had a knack for it, an innate understanding of how living energy flowed. I watched from the sidelines, helping out where I could, offering moral support and hauling supplies. Pride swelled in me as I saw her flourishing, a quiet leader despite her own lingering doubts. But as word spread, so too did the risk of exposure. Rumors reached us that corporate scouts occasionally slipped into Dawn's Refuge, disguised as refugees, gathering intelligence. Ryan's security tried to root them out, but it wasn't foolproof. Izuria's presence grew more widely known. She was the Shothari caretaker in the grotto, teaching her people to cultivate the cycle-soothing herb. I worried. Late one evening, while I was out scrounging for mechanical parts, a friend I'd made, a scruffy smuggler named Derek, pulled me aside. "Heard something you should know," he muttered, glancing around. "Corporate informants are sniffing around, asking about a glowing alien in the grotto. They're paying good credits for any leads." I felt ice settle in my stomach. "Izuria." Derek nodded grimly. "Be careful, mate." I clasped his hand in thanks, then rushed back to our quarters. I found Izuria seated on the bunk, her cloak draped beside her. She was weaving a small decoration of dried herbs and filaments, lost in thought. "We have to be cautious," I blurted, breathless. "Corporate eyes are on the Refuge. Word's out that a Shothari with some special knowledge is here." Her filaments flickered with alarm. "So soon? I thought we'd have more time." I knelt beside her, gripping her hands. "We might have to leave." Her expression darkened. "If I go, what happens to the greenhouse, to the Shothari here who rely on it?" My heart sank. "We can't help them if you're captured. They'll track you, exploit your cycle knowledge." She bowed her head, shoulders trembling. "Why must we always run?" My throat tightened. "Because they won't stop until they have you. Until they harness the Shothari. I'm sorry." She drew a shaky breath, tears gathering. "I can't abandon them. Not after everything we've built." I swallowed, holding her gaze. "Then we need another plan. Security might help, but if corporate reinforcements come, Dawn's Refuge can't handle a full assault." She lifted her chin. Maybe we can strike a deal. The Refuge might rally around us. There are smugglers, mercenaries, ex-soldiers, people who hate the Corps. If we stand together, we could repel an incursion." I considered it. "It's risky. But maybe it's time we stop running and make a stand." Her eyes sparked with determination, filaments glowing bright. "Yes. I'm tired of being a fugitive. If the corporations come, they'll find we're not defenseless. My chest swelled at her courage. We decided to approach Ryan and the stations in formal council, proposing a defensive pact. When we explained the risk and how corporations might attempt a raid, some were hesitant, fearing a crackdown. Others, resentful of corporate tyranny, pledged to stand with us. A plan formed to fortify the station's perimeter with hidden turrets, scramble sensors to mask energy signatures. Volunteers agreed to stand guard. Savi and other Shothari prepared to relocate deeper into the station if an attack came, safeguarding the greenhouse. Ryan organized shifts among the more combat-savvy refugees. In the midst of the flurry of preparation, Iziria and I found a moment alone in the greenhouse. She was tending to a row of newly sprouted herbs, gently tracing her filaments over the leaves. I watched her, marveling at how far she'd come from the frightened, lonely woman I'd met in that derelict station corridor. She felt my gaze, turning with a soft smile. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. She nodded, stepping closer. "Me too. But also, strangely hopeful. These people are willing to fight to protect their home, and us." I reached out, brushing my thumb along her cheek. "Because of you, Iziria. You showed them something worth fighting for." Her eyes misted. She leaned into my touch. "And you gave me the strength to show them." We stood there, the soft glow of her filaments illuminating our tender moment. Tomorrow, or the next day, or next week, who knew when corporate hunters would strike? But we'd face it together. In that greenhouse, surrounded by the delicate sprouts of new life, I felt our bond deepen yet again. Our hearts hammered in tandem, bracing for the storm we knew was coming, but finding solace in the warmth of each other's presence. And in that silent vow, we realized this was more than survival. It was the beginning of something greater, for both of us and for the scattered Shothari who dared to dream of a future free from oppression.